The Pacers, turns out this weekend, couldn't quite turn it around and still kind of stink at practice. They had a nice resting weekend and they're ready to come out strong, but the vibes around this team are not good. Lots to get to on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News, and today we're going to continue to talk about this team that is struggling mightily. 4-game losing streak, 7 games under 500 for the first time in over a half decade. Lots of struggles, turnaround needed for a team with playoff aspirations. And joining me to do that from the Indianapolis Star on the Schultz Star Show and freelancing for Indianapolis Monthly, writing the best weekly Colts blog out there, Mr. Derek Schultz himself. Derek, how's it going, man?
It's going, man. Thanks for inviting me on. You know, I mean this in the most complimentary way possible. I think I've told you this before. I'm a pretty religious listener to the Low Post, and like your cadence on the podcast, your voices are somewhat similar, but like the cadence is almost dead on with Zach Lowe. And every time, like sometimes when I'm listening to your podcast and then I'll listen to Zach, because I try to get all my NBA stuff at once. So I won't do like an NBA show and then an NFL show. So sometimes I'll listen to them back to back, and then I have to remind myself, wait, which one am I listening to here? So I hope you like being compared. I love Zach Lowe, so I hope you like being compared to somebody like that.
He is fantastic, and I love doing a rigid intro, and like the walls in my apartment aren't that thick, so my girlfriend can always hear it. So like whenever she's just like annoyed with me, she'll just like, welcome in, just to mess with me, because my voice always changes when I start recording. But yes, it's fun to have an intro that I have nailed down and can look away and not even think about and say the whole thing up. Derek, like I already said, this Pacers team is not looking hot right now. This is probably the lowest point, definitely the lowest point they've been at this season. Maybe the lowest point they've been at since the Brogdon Sabonis core really started 2.5 seasons ago. It's very strange that they're like this, considering how they got here. Everybody kind of thought the steps of the offseason were at least okay. So they're 9-16. They've lost 4 in a row. All good teams, but still winnable games, 2 close games in there. Where do you kind of look at this team and identify their biggest issue? Because I've kind of aired out my own list of problems that they have for like 6 shows in a row now. So I want to know what you think, top of the list or any of the list really, of what's going wrong with this team, because this is certainly a low point for this franchise right now.
Yeah, and I was actually having a discussion with a buddy of mine, texting back and forth about that the other night. And, you know, when is the last time that you felt this poorly about where the Pacers were? And we both kind of agreed that you have to go back to the Dunleavy-Murphy era, where it just felt like not only was it not a good product, it just had no direction. Like they weren't going anywhere, because Dunleavy and Murphy at that point were like veteran players, established guys in the league. And you had like TJ Ford, like you didn't have really any young talent. Danny Granger, I guess, was kind of coming into his own then. So maybe that was the lone thing to kind of be excited about. And then later on, you had Hibbert and some of the pieces of the 2012 to 14 run started to kind of come in and trickle in. But for the most part, you just felt like, oh my God, they're just trapped. Like there's just nowhere for this team to go. I'll say this to defend them. I think they have a lot of the same issue that the Colts are having this year, whereas if they didn't have bad luck, they'd have no luck at all. Like,
Yes.
They're 1-9 in games decided by 4 points or less. Generally, that's like a coin flip. So then we're talking about, instead of a 9-16 team, I wasn't a math major at IU, but we're talking more like a 13-12, 12-13 type team. If that was a normal mark and this stuff all comes out in the wash over the course of a long season. So I do think that they're better than what their record says. Like I don't view this team, even though on the standings they look like one of the worst teams in the league. I don't think this is one of the worst teams in the league. I think they're grossly mediocre, but I don't think that they're as bad as kind of what their record says. The frustrating thing for me, Tony, is that you can't just conjure up trades out of thin air, right? I totally understand that. But I said this at the time, and I still feel this way. I just felt like it was a real mistake if they didn't do this. And I didn't hear that they did this. That doesn't mean that they didn't do that. But I didn't hear that they aggressively pursued trades in the offseason. I think they were fine running this core back. And I just think that was a mistake. I think last year they wanted to pin it all on Bjorgren and injuries. And I think the problems went deeper than that. And the fits just weren't really quite there. And you could say, well, Warren and Levert and the injuries. Okay, yeah, they barely had a full complement of players, didn't really have a full complement of players, I don't think at all. But I think a lot of the problems and the frustration from this year just kind of roots from that. Like the Pacers, whether intentional or not, this fan base views them as an organization that's fine with this, that doesn't care. That's just like, okay, yeah, we're good enough just being whatever, mediocre, average. And, I know that that's not how Kevin Pritchard feels or the Simon family or anybody involved with the organization. But rightly or wrongly, that's just kind of the perception of where they are. So it's a lot of things that I think it's a lot of little things as opposed to just one big thing that is causing where the Pacers are. But, I would point to just the personnel issues, new coach. So there's going to be, I guess, a little bit of a learning curve there. But something else that's kind of struck me, and you could tell me if it has with you, is that I just feel like there hasn't been enough consistent juice, which is crazy to say about a professional basketball team. But, it just seems to be just so – teams are flat. It happens. It's a long 82-game NBA season, but there seems to have been a lot of flat so far in these first 27 games.
Yeah, I have several things you just said I want to address, but I'll start with something you ended with, because when McMillan was the coach, people always talked about like, oh, the Pacers win all these easy games every year because they come out every game and they try, and like that doesn't work in the playoffs. And I'm like, okay, but now we're here where they don't try and everyone's pissed. Like, don't you miss that? Wasn't that awesome? That every game Nate McMillan got his dudes to care for 48 minutes. Like last 2 seasons, every game there's 8 to 10 minutes where these dudes are just, they're so flat, they look terrible, and then they lose because that stretch was so bad. So that's number one. I think that McMillan deserves more credit for how they played hard every single game. 2, just because I'm a cap dork and I know all the rules, like they actually spent pretty much all they were allowed to the last 2 summers. Like COVID killed them because they spent the year before it hit cap-wise. I could do a whole show on that. I might when they have their 5 days off later this month. But I do agree that it was odd that they went 34 and 38 and they said, okay, we got Torrey Craig. Like, we did it. That's our team now. You're like, what? You expect a little more there. But I think the big one that you said is just the flatness every game. Like every game they go on the post-game media and they're like, effort. We got to play with force and harder. It's like, okay, I get that that's what you think the problem is, because like you said, we all know you're better than this and you've beaten some good teams this year. But why are you telling us 4 games in a row? Like, do it. Play harder. Like, do it. Don't tell us and have these film sessions and all these problems and like, do it. You're pros. You're millionaire athletes. Like, do it. It's very weird that they're like that. And it's not all effort. Like, obviously I can watch the game. Like, I can see them messing up and turning the ball over and having defensive lapses and stuff. Like, they're a flawed team, but they're very frustrating because of their messaging right now and where they're at. It's very odd. And I've never had this disconnect with the fan base or the team before. It's like, what do they want to be? What are they trying to be? It's very weird right now.
Yeah, it's one thing for a team, and I think we'd agree. This team has a low ceiling, even if everything goes right, even if the effort is 100% there. You said they're a flawed team, and so I'm willing to accept that. But what I'm not willing is that to be a low ceiling team. Fine, okay, great. The Pacers for much of their history have been kind of a low ceiling team, right? That's nothing new for fans. But what I'm not willing to accept is not even getting close to bumping your head up against that low ceiling, and so far through 27 games, they haven't even kind of come close to. They've grossly underachieved in my eyes. I think it'd be really simple, Tony, to just say, oh, this team sucks. They're garbage, whatever. I don't think they suck. I don't think they're garbage. I think they're better than this. That doesn't mean that I think they're a championship contender, but I try to enter each season with a bar of expectations. I try to be fair. That's the biggest thing for me, is just to be fair, not be flying off the hinge all the time, or, be realistic with my expectations. And to me, just 9-16 and the way that they've gotten there, yes, they've had bad luck in the close losses, but the effort thing, the flatness thing, that's what's really been kind of driving me up the wall. And I'm glad that I guess I'm still frustrated and you're still frustrated. And maybe if you're listening to this Pacers podcast, if you're investing your time enough in the Pacers to listen to this, you're still frustrated. But what I worry about is that, kind of hearkening back to earlier in our conversation with the Dunleavy-Murphy era, people are checking out and people are checked out already, past tense. And we're only, we're not even to Christmas yet. And that's going to be a real problem here kind of going forward, not just with the streaming issues and all that. I mean, I know you don't want to get into that today. I'm sure we've talked about it umpteen times, but there's a problem when you start losing people. It's a different fan base than some of these other NBA cities.
Yeah, I'm sure the Pacers accounting department was not thrilled with how hard their early season schedule was. That's for sure. And that's not why the schedule's not why they've lost these games. But their hard schedule is a factor, to the point that every coach for all of time has said the same thing about the schedule. Oh, we play every team twice. Whatever. It's the schedule, is what it is. This is the first year I've ever covered a team where the president and the coach were like, damn, our schedule's hard. Like, it was pretty funny to hear them come out like that. But you know who else doesn't think the Pacers are bad, Derek?
Where's
the
that?
Chicago Bulls and the Utah Jazz and the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat. Teams that they beat, which is why it's so strange that they just suck against these random teams at home. And, fans are rightly checking out after this losing streak, losing 5 of 6. And this upcoming home week with 3 not that they're playing bad teams. The Wizards, Knicks, and Mavs are all good, but they're winnable, right? None of them are awesome. Like, this is a big week for getting your fans to watch the team this season. Hey guys, quick little break to tell you about 2 awesome groups of people. First up, the good folks over at PrizePicks, with the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. They offer more props than any other DFS prop operator and offer all the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. They offer any prop you can think of, and any user that deposits and uses our promo code will receive a 100% instant match deposit up to $100. Just be sure to use the promo code NBA. They allow mixed sport entries. You can use their award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Their entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They are safe and offer fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com today and use that promo code NBA, or go to your App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Let's also talk about the good people over at DirecTV Stream, because if you're like me, you've got one device to catch your sporting events live, another to stream your favorite TV shows, a third even your phone to watch sports highlights, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract, so get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at DirecTV.com. That's DirecTV.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. I have a topic about this team that I have not brought up on the show that I want to talk about. And that is very strange to me. They cannot hit a 3 at all this year. That's not surprising, but what is the NBA now? It's a lot of threes, and they're only taking about 15th most in the league. And I don't want to get back to the McMillan era where we're take more threes and shaking our fists all the time at the team, but they're 26th in 3-point percentage right now. Brogdon is shooting 32%. Sabonis is taking 3 a game and shooting 28%. Justin Holiday shooting below league average. LeVert's at 25%, taking 5 a game. Keelan Martin's taking 3 a game at 27%. You get the idea. Another thing that's luck, like the end of games, like you said, where it's more of a coin flip than it is making and missing open shots. And Rick Carlisle has brought that up a lot. So, philosophical question before we actually talk about their 3-point shots. Do you think that they are due for a progression, or do you think they get bad shots in games?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think it's necessarily, I'll be honest, Tony, I'm more kind of watching the surface stuff than I am, analyzing everything about all the shots that they get and the actions that they run and things like that. But it appears to me, in layman's terms, that they're getting okay shots. I don't think that that's a product of running a bad offense or a stagnant offense or anything like that. And we've seen this team, you mentioned Nate McMillan earlier. Nate McMillan just wasn't really interested in this being a 3-point offense at all. This team, it's not the Bjorgren offense, right? But they at least appear to be interested in making that part of their game, as you have to in today's NBA. What's kind of frustrated me just weirdly, about the 3-point shooting is that I was really expecting that at some point, and he does a lot of other things well. I was expecting that at some point it would start to really kind of click for Domantas Sabonis. Like I really did think that eventually, if I remember right, his rookie year, he was a little more that guy than the big down low post banger guy.
Correct.
And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe he can kind of make this part of his game, but it's not for lack of trying. He's trying, but it just doesn't seem like that's what is he shooting? 27%, 26%. It's not great so far this year. And I'm not trying to, hang all their 3-point problems on Domas, but it would be nice if you are hell bent on having these two bigs and all of that. It would be nice if they could both step out and do it. And Sabonis just every once in a while he'll have a flurry where he'll hit like 3 in a row, and you'll be like, all right, here we go. And then it just kind of goes away from him. It feels like.
Yeah, this is the simplest level of basketball analysis. So I'm about to say stupid stuff, but 26 and 3-point percentage means they're missing a lot of shots every game. That'll make you lose a lot. But
yeah.
So 2 thoughts there. One is I think that specifically Brogdon shooting poorly. Justin Holiday was surging before he got COVID and is now out. They'll have a couple guys that will. Their percentage will raise, but they have a lot of possessions where they work really hard, like 16 seconds of action and passing and screening and getting in the paint to get like a Torrey Craig 3, and like it's open. It's like, okay, that's an open 3, but you worked really hard to get Torrey Craig an open 3. It's like maybe that isn't the possession that they need to be doing, and it'll go down and the stat sheet is like, yeah, decent shooter, took a wide open corner 3, like, yeah, but no, that's a lot of work, and then you're tired on defense, and they do that kind of stuff has been weird this season. And McConnell is in the same boat where they sometimes work really hard, and the possession ends with him shooting a corner 3, and same with Keelan Martin, who's missing a bunch, and O'Shea Brissett, and all these role guys aren't making them. It's like I kind of feel like they need to work a little more inside out than they have been recently, as they miss all these threes, and they've been kind of going away from Sabonis. We'll talk about him a little more later, in a way that is strange. And it's just perplexing to me the way they get the threes up, because they have better shooters. Those guys just don't shoot the shots. It's like LeVert and Brogdon take a lot of off the dribble threes. Sabonis is only good from the corners to me. Miles' volume's going down for some reason in recent games. It's very perplexing. And it's like the only issue I have left that I haven't gone in depth on the show of like, wow, this is a big problem for them, is they can't do this thing that every other NBA team is really focusing on right now.
Yeah, and it's definitely a problem, and it's been a problem for them for really a long time with the 3-point offense. And maybe you take last year out of it, but maybe they were over relying on it last year. So it's just it's always been kind of one thing or the other. It feels like with them.
They have become kind of reflexive to like their last problem, like overcorrecting their last problem. Yeah. Let's talk about Sabonis, because a lot of people watching this team, I'm assuming including you, but I'll let you speak to that in a second, have noticed that he is not getting the ball as much or getting it in the advantageous positions that he was last year. He's able to be the handoff guy, be the screening guy, be involved at all, right? And he is fantastic with the ball. He can screen really well. He can set up his teammates. He's excellent at hitting cutters. It seems like he should have the ball more. And like on the basic level, it seems obvious. His usage right now is the lowest it's been since he joined the Pacers. That includes the 2 seasons he came off the bench, right? So he's getting the ball way less, or really usage is finishing possessions, but he's getting the ball way less than he ever has. And so I kind of feel like that's kind of a simple solution. I wrote this piece forever ago when Doug McDermott wasn't shooting ever, and no one was passing to him. The title was, "Someone Please Pass Doug McDermott the Ball." I am now pivoting that title to Domantas Sabonis, the Pacers' 2-time All-Star the last 2 seasons. Someone please pass Domantas Sabonis the ball. They look way better when he's more involved, and I think that is such a low-hanging fruit thing for this team to get better, is, hey, this guy's really good. Maybe he should be involved in what we're doing.
Yeah, I actually went back and looked, because I was kind of thinking the same thing. I think you actually tweeted about it, about the fact that he needs more touches, and other people that I follow were mentioning it too. And in the last 10 games, he had something like, I think he had a dozen or fewer field goal attempts in like 8 of the last. Now, some of that's foul trouble. He had 5 fouls. They had a couple nights where he kind of got into foul trouble and played 22 minutes, less playing time. So I'm not saying that it's all about that, but yeah, he's a guy that needs the ball really to be effective. So I just don't really know. We hear Colts fans complain about it all the time with Jonathan Taylor, when he's not getting his carries. I don't really know why you wouldn't want to consistently feature the best player your most gifted offensive player, which I think inarguably he is, right? I mean, I don't think anybody would argue anyone else on the team would be superior to what Domas brings to the table as far as that's concerned. So, yeah, it has been odd to me, and it's just kind of one of those things where I don't know what the explanation is. Maybe it is the fact that too many role players are getting open threes that they're missing, and those are making it so Domas isn't getting those touches. But yeah, I don't really understand it at all. Why the usage is down? You should never have a game where Domas plays 30 minutes and takes 8 shots. Like that should never happen. And I don't know why it seems to more than often happen to them.
88 touches per game in the last season of McMillan, 97 last year. That was maybe a little too high even. Only 73 this year. Way down this year. Way down. Like 25 touches in a game is a lot. That's like one every other minute of less Sabonis touching the ball. And I think a lot of it too, for me, this is just, I have no stats for this, which is rare for me. Eye testing, like when they have these slump stretches that they have every game now, it's just when they're like whizzing around the perimeter and not going in at all and not trying to get Sabonis the ball on the block or the elbow where he can be really effective. So just seeing him get less touches seems like such an obvious thing when they play. He's really good. Like, give him the ball. I feel, but I want to go to Carlisle for my criticism of this because, like, I know that something he really likes is when all of his players can do a lot of things, right? Like on any given possession, anyone can be the point guard and push it up, and anyone can end up being the guy who ends up in the corner or sets a screen or initiates the action, whatever. Like, he likes that, and that's good. It keeps the defense on their toes, but at times that means like less effective players are getting the ball, and that, maybe I think that they should dial that back just a little bit and try to be a little more set in their ways. There is a right balance of pace that they've been struggling to get, and I think Carlisle needs to kind of figure that out in a way that allows Sabonis to be more effective and the team to be more effective and not have like Keelan Martin running pick and rolls and stuff like that.
And maybe that's what this is. Maybe this is just a 26-game feeling out process for Carlisle. I mean, he's got an NBA championship, and you can say what you want about things maybe not, eroding away a little bit in Dallas over the years, in recent years, but still, I think the track record speaks for itself. I mean, he's a guy that clearly knows what he's doing, unlike maybe what happened at times last year, or a guy that is willing to change based on what he's seeing, which is something that McMillan wasn't really willing to do. He was kind of set, okay, this is what we're doing, and you're going to like it, and that's it. So I do think Carlisle is kind of the best of both of the last two in that willing to change, but also trying to feel some things out. And I think that's what you're going to get with any coach. It doesn't matter what their track record is, NBA champion or not, coaching for 20 years or not, there's going to be a feeling out process when you inherit a brand new roster.
One more break so I can tell you about two more awesome groups of people. And the first one is the good people over at Built Bar, because if you're like me, you love Thanksgiving, you already miss it. So much good food and treats around that time. But maybe you want a yummy dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugar. It's the perfect time of year for Built Bars, the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. Pie has upwards of 300 calories per slice on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar. With plenty of protein, you can get coconut cream Built Bar instead of coconut cream pie, raspberry Built Bar instead of raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie, all low calorie, low carb, low fat, but high in protein. 100% covered in real chocolate. They're a great option when you're healthy, a great option for when you're hungry, a great healthy option for a snack or a meal replacement. Share them at family gatherings. They have new flavors coming out all month, so go try them. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. That promo code, again, LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Let's also talk about the good folks over at BetOnline.ag who have you covered all season for more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues. The march to the playoffs, the Colts smoked the Texans today, so BetOnline remains your number one spot for all that sports action this year. Head over to their new updated desktop or mobile website and sign up today. You can receive a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON when you do so to receive that bonus from basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Yeah, part of me is sympathetic to that, but also it's like it's weird because remember last year, after a month and a half, they were like the 2 seed in the East. We're all like, wow, Nate Bjorkgren's a genius. And then we all saw what happened there. And maybe they have the opposite season this year where they completely turned it around and look great down the stretch. But it's very funny in retrospect when I always think about like, yeah, they're learning a new system. Like, I get that. I think that's a fair reason to say that you have a blip or two every game. But last year you were learning a new system and you looked really good. Speaking of potentially turning it around, I mean, you have watched the NBA a lot longer than me and covered basketball teams a lot longer than me. Do you remember, like, 9-16 isn't so bad, but it's kind of bad. Do you kind of remember teams that are able to turn it around to like this extent? I mean, they're really exactly a third of the way into the season. Like, do you kind of feel like they can? Where do they go from here? Do you feel like that's very broad, but I want to know what you think.
Yeah, because like I said, I still think if things correct here, like, this 4 points or less deficit, obviously they're not going to win those at a 10% clip the whole season. That's not going to happen. So that'll get better. And, we'll see about Warren and all this stuff. They keep saying, well, it's going to be another month, and then a month passes. Okay. It's going to be another month.
Months, Derek. Weeks, not months.
Come on. Yeah. I at this point, if he plays at all, great. That's just kind of gravy. I think their ceiling is kind of what it's been the last couple of years, where you hope to avoid the play-in round and then you take your chances in a first round series. The bar for me this year was I wanted to see them get back to the playoffs, and that's probably a lower bar than most people had. And sorry, in the field, so not the play-in round. Like,
yeah, that's not the playoffs. That does not count.
Yeah. So I wanted to extend that, and I felt like that was kind of a fair bar. And I still think that they can get there. But that's going to frustrate a lot of people because with this slow start, people are just going to want them to tank out, which of course they're not going to do. You talk about this Pacers team compared to like other teams that I can remember that started this way and then just kind of figured things out. I can't think of really one that played this poorly early and then kind of got it going, but I can think of some that got it going, later in the season. The 2012 team, the 11-12 team, I think got really dangerous and pushed the Heat that year in the playoffs. People forget they were up. A lot of people talk about the 13 series, right? The Hibbert block on Carmelo against the Knicks, and the next series he kind of owns the Heat and they go 7 games, the whole deal. But the year before that, they were up 2-1 with a halftime lead in Game 4 at home. And then LeBron and Wade basically played 2-on-5 for the entire second half, and it was the most unbelievable thing that I've ever seen in person in an NBA game. They're throwing like full court alley-oops to each other. It was crazy. But that team really kind of kicked it into gear. But they had already established themselves as a good team. Right. They were, I want to say maybe
they went from good to great, not from bad to good.
Yeah, I think they were the 3rd seed maybe in the East, which is, at this point probably a pipe dream for the Pacers. So you don't want to write anything off, but I just don't. This core, Tony, yes, they haven't been together very long, but Brogdon, Sabonis, LeVert all came in the same draft. So this is year 6. This is year, if you can believe it, 7 for Miles Turner. Like at some point, you just kind of have to say, okay, look, if it's going to go for this group, it would have gone already. Like it would have kind of clicked here. And the fact that we're still kind of feeling some things out and there's no identity and all of that just kind of gives me a lot of pause that it's just not going to happen for this specific group.
Yeah, I agree with basically all of that. And I think Scott Agnes asked a great question of practice today. He asked Karis LeVert, what you guys are all saying, and rightfully so, it's still early, and you've had a lot of close losses. And Karis was like, like you said earlier, if those go better, we're closer to 500, whatever. Scott said, like, what's the point on the calendar, or what's the game number where you hit it and then you go, oh crap, we're actually bad. It's not early season anymore, and that no player would ever answer that question with an actual like, oh, December 28th. I didn't expect a real answer, but there has to be a point for coaches or front office or players or whoever where they're like, dang, we're kind of not good, and figure it out from there. And so I think that once you hit that set date, whatever it is in your own head, I think for a lot of fans, it was 2 weeks ago. you pivot in some way. You look to whatever the season can be. And so whether that's, okay, we know Duarte is awesome for his experience level, and Sabonis is a 2-time All-Star. We can't trade Brogdon this year. Let's maximize those 3 guys and figure out what we can do with the rest of the stuff, or something like that. That's kind of where I feel like they go. And I'm not going to set a date right now, and I'm not going to go through all these paths at this time. I think that's a later show right now, not too much later if they keep playing like this. But I think that's kind of how they have to think is, okay, if we can't turn this around at this point on the calendar, big red circle like in the movies, then we have to start thinking about changing how we analyze this team. Because like you said, they've been around for a while, and we have zero playoff wins to show for this team that we put together in 2019. So that's kind of where I feel like they go. And when you're 9-16, you have to start thinking that way. Now, it doesn't sound like that bad of a record because it's only been 20 whatever games, but it's not very good. I said Duarte's name, so I'm gonna end with this. You, like I said, have been watching the NBA a lot longer than me. Do you have any comparable rookies for him? Where do you feel like he stands in the hierarchy of Pacers rookies? How do you like what you've seen from him so far? Ending on an optimistic note with a fun and maybe the most exciting thing about the Pacers this year.
Yeah, I'm not that much older than you, but
I always like to. I'm making that a bit where I call everyone way older than me when they come on the show.
Back in my day, I am old enough to remember when guys came into the league and they were ready. And they were, you know what I mean? Like they were ready to start.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking like the transcendent,
Tim
LeBron
Duncan,
James.
LeBron, whatever.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, like I think people know what I mean by that. But it's just been so rare to see somebody drafted in the late lottery, the teens basically, and certainly in the 20s, come in and just be ready. And like I barely watched them in college because I just don't. Pac-12 major sports is just not real. UCLA made that run, but for the most part in basketball and football, it really hasn't been much of a relevant league.
You're not staying up till 11:30 p.m. Eastern to watch Oregon, Utah?
No, I wasn't doing that. But I tried to read everything that I could and listen to everything that I could about Chris Duarte, and people kept hammering home. He's ready. He's ready. He's the most ready. He's the most ready, But I still kind of took it with a grain of salt because at the same time on the other side, they're saying, well, best case scenario, he's like a McDermott replacement. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, he's a perfectly capable NBA player, whatever. Sure. Doug McDermott, not to knock on Doug. I like Doug McDermott a lot. But, you kind of temper your expectations when you're thinking that. You're thinking, oh, well, he's a rotational player. That's his ceiling. Low ceiling, ready to play, because that's what always happens with these guys that are, what's Duarte, 38 years old or whatever he is. So, but, as I watch him, I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, are we sure that his ceiling is that low? Because you look at some of the skills that he already has and the baseline that he has, and you feel like there can be a lot of growth there, even for a 24-year-old. But the polish and poise, it's incredible, comparatively speaking, because even when the Pacers have drafted older guys, and they've done that, as Solomon Hill, Tower Hansbrough spent 10 years at North Carolina. They've come in and not looked ready right away. Hansbrough never really looked ready. He was just kind of flailing all over the place and, trying to do what he got away with in college, which is to just basically kick his legs out into a defender and shoot free throws. And that doesn't really work in the NBA. So, Duarte, as far as like a recent Pacers comparison, I can't really think of one because he is much better and appears to have much more potential than their experienced guys. And he's much more polished and much more ready as a rookie than guys like Paul George or the people that they essentially took flyers on. Miles Turner, right. the young, 19-year-old guys, 20-year-old guys that they knew were going to have to grow into kind of what they became. So you probably have to go back a ways. I didn't know much about, the late, great Malik Sealy, but, I heard good things. Maybe he would be like that sort of kind of comparison where he came in and seemed to play and be NBA ready. I'll have to look up Malik Sealy's stats when we get off of this podcast to make sure that I'm not speaking out of school here. But I'm trying to think of like the last, Pacers rookie that would have kind of been in that mix. And it's hard to really come up with one.
The occasional name I insert is Tinsley because he was actually pretty good right away, but that obviously derailed a little bit.
Yeah, and Tinsley played in a lot of like big time games too, and that I think kind of lended to that. Tinsley was a much better player than he was ever given credit for.
Absolutely,
and I think the fact that he got blamed for getting shot at, and look, Jamal Tinsley wasn't a cherub or anything. I think he would admit that he made some mistakes in his career, but I think the narrative around him. It was unfortunate because I think it really took away from how good of a basketball player he was.
Yeah. So with Duarte, what's funny is you talked about reading all this stuff. Like the whole time, like every rookie quote before the season starts, I just in one ear out the other for me. Cause I'm like, that's just media gobbledygook. Obviously Isaiah Jackson can defend 5 positions. That's why they picked him 22 and no one wanted him in the first 21 picks. Or, Duarte's the best shooter they've ever seen. And but this is the first time since I've been covering the team that they've all been right. Like this kid is actually mature beyond his years. He's actually really good right now. He can create his own shot off the bounce. Like Duarte is really good. And they're actually telling the truth about him in a way that is interesting because usually my brain's like rookie equals bad. Like they're not going to contribute at all. So he's fascinating. I don't really know where to assess his future because I don't, you don't 24-year-old rookies are rare. Buddy Hield was technically 24 when he was drafted because of like Oklahoma listing his age wrong, but it's very rare that there's guys that old. So I don't really know how to assess how he grows, but he's very clearly good. And I think that's important for a team that's 9-16 to go, okay, good. We got one. Let's make sure we maximize that this whole season and keep him playing a lot every game because that is the brightest spot on this team so far.
With college recruiting, what I always look at is not star rankings and overall, but who wanted you. And you go through the offer list and you're like, oh, okay, well, USC wanted, Alabama wanted him, or Ohio State wanted him. And with Duarte, what really struck me on draft night, because a lot of the reaction on draft night was, oh my God, another old low ceiling guy, right? And I'm reading through these reports and, I follow a lot of Knicks people because I grew up a Knicks fan. And the Knicks are like falling all over themselves to try to get him. And then, apparently there were 5 other teams that were like lined up to trade up and to get into that spot. And I was thinking to myself, wow, a lot of people really want this dude. And that was kind of my first inkling of now what we've come to find out in 25 games that there's a reason why I guess a lot of teams wanted Chris Duarte.
Yeah, I was extremely wrong about how good he would be. Not that I watched a ton of Oregon until the draft was coming, but he looks awesome, and all these teams that wanted him certainly should have been more telling. And the picks right after him also not looking very hot right now. So excellent work by the Pacers to actually get a good rookie. Like they picked Aaron Holiday, he was old, and that didn't pan out, and TJ Leaf's already out of the league, and Goga barely plays now. It's nice that they got one hit, and maybe Isaiah's another one, but that is what they're hanging their hat on thing, I think, going into the rest of the season and next season is we have to be better, but we also have to know that we have a building block for like the next 6 years. We talked about 6 years is what we're at with LeVert and Sabonis. Like that's the next 6-year mark that they need to be aiming for. Derek, thank you for the time. Where can people follow you and all your stuff to find your other Pacers opinions that you don't share with me in this setting?
Well, you can see it on the screen there, that @Schultz975. That's, I guess, the best way to kind of follow along. But do a lot of stuff with the Indy Star and a weekly podcast with a lot of their writers. But we have some coaches and athletes and other media that kind of fill in on that. You can check that on all major platforms. Jake and I still have our thing going, even though he's left me for Kevin Bowen. He's traded me in for a younger model for a daily morning radio show. But we're still doing our once a week thing, podcast form, same thing, all platforms. But also we've got a YouTube channel that we started fairly recently that we're trying to build up, and ISC Sports Network and Comcast 81 locally, so you can actually, unlike the Pacers, for a lot of people watch us on TV. And then the Indy Monthly stuff.
Laughter for me. That was a noise you heard somewhere else in the back.
Yeah, right. And then the Indy Monthly stuff has been a lot of fun. You're a much better writer than I am, but I like to pretend to write. So I pretend to write every couple of weeks for Indy Monthly and do those stupid Colts recaps as well that you should absolutely and definitely read.
I very much like the Indy Monthly just says, Derek, Nate, do whatever you want. and
Yeah,
go.
100%. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the ultimate. They even told me, they said, when they asked me, hey, do you want to write? And I said, well, yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on. They're like, well, just write whatever you feel like, whenever you feel like it. And I was like, I can do that.
that it is fantastic. Derek is fantastic. Everybody go check him out and all his stuff. This show's, of course, at Locked On Pacers and me at TEastNBA. Yell at me for saying stupid stuff. I love when people yell at me on the internet now because I've not become a reply guy anymore. So I just take it in, move on to the next thing. Everybody have a great day. We got Pacers versus Wizards tonight. Will the Pacers lose to the Wizards for the 6th time in like 5 months? We'll see. They really need to beat this team to get some morale going, get the fans back engaged. We'll break that whole game down tomorrow. Derek, again, thank you for the time. And everybody have a great rest of your day.